Welcome back to Under the Tights, powered by the one and only Heroes Comics. It's Sean, Highway 41, right here in Fresno, where they've been slinging the best in books for 28 years. Go see my boy Dave so you can get the knowledge about the heroes that you love at Heroes Comics. Today, we're going to focus on Jessica Jones from The Defenders, which is out now on Netflix. It's basically all the Marvel Netflix series rolled into one. So you got your Daredevil, you got Luke Cage, the Iron Fist, and Jessica Jones. And I wanted to focus on one of the characters in particular because I already did a Under the Tights on The Defenders, the origin of that name, the different heroes that have been associated with it. But I thought this version, and with this Netflix show being released now, was interesting because although I knew a lot about Daredevil and I know a lot about the Iron Fist, I know enough about Luke Cage, I really didn't know anything about Jessica Jones. My first experience with her really was the Netflix original series a couple years ago, and that's rare to me that a character that's been around for as long as she has would have kind of been so far off my radar. I never read any of the books she was part of, so that's probably why. I never read Alias, I never read Pulse, and that's where that character kind of came from. I would see her pop up from time to time when she was associated with different people, mostly Luke Cage. But I thought this would be an interesting topic for me because it's not very often that I get to dive in and learn about a new character. Some of the things that I learned in some background of Jessica Jones that I found to be interesting. First of all, it seems like 90% of the Marvel universe lives in New York. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's a Stan Lee thing because that's where he's from and it all kind of centers around that. But it's, you got Spider-Man and Daredevil and the Fantastic Four and Iron Man and even Doctor Strange. I mean, all these characters, it's all where they live. Not only is Jessica Jones from that area, she actually went to the same high school as Peter Parker. Learned that while researching this. She went to high school with Peter. They were actually friends. She got her powers in a car accident. Another connection, in a car accident coming home from a vacation that her parents had been given courtesy Tony Stark. So you got the Iron Man connection there as well. She was in a car accident, her parents were killed, and nuclear waste was involved in the accident, and that waste gave her her superpowers. So now she is an orphaned, superpowered character who meets the Campbell family, and she gets adopted, and it leads to kind of anxiety and social issues growing up, and that's why her and Peter are friends through high school, and that's kind of why she is the way she is. She's very untrusting at first. She has to, kind of really warm up to people. Different people in her life become very, very important. Characters that she's been associated with like Ms. Marvel and Luke Cage, for example. This was the one thing that I knew when it gets into the Luke Cage part of the Jessica Jones story. And I don't want to spoil this for people whose only association is the Netflix series, but in the comic books, her name is not even Jessica Jones anymore. It's Jessica Campbell, first of all, which was her name from her parents. Jones, which was the name of her adopted family. Cage, because her and Luke Cage get hitched. Not only do they get married, but they have a kid together, like a superhero family team. So if you haven't gotten that far or you didn't know that, don't be surprised if the show starts leaning that way at some point in time. I'm not spoiling anything. I haven't finished this season of Defenders, so maybe it goes that way. I don't know. But in the comic books, that's kind of one of the things you need to know. Her story is also interesting because the first real conflict that draws you into her character. Every superhero needs to have a conflict that makes them relatable, which is kind of, not to get way off on something, which is kind of why I always thought Superman was kind of a weak character because he's so invulnerable. He's got one weakness that he's just not relatable. The reason people relate to these Marvel characters is because they're flawed. I mean, Spider-Man is a fatherless teenager. Who can't relate to that? I know I can relate to that. I mean, Iron Man has alcoholism problems. I mean, they all have something. You all need something to draw people in and make them relatable. And Jessica Jones was, anxiety issues, and she falls victim to a super villain named Kilgrave, whose power is to basically manipulate people, and he can get people to do anything he says. And he kind of uses her as a puppet for a long time. So you're drawn into this character who's doesn't want to be a bad person, but is being victimized emotionally and psychologically by a overbearing male figure. So again, very kind of relatable real world social issues that drew you into her character. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of where she comes from, why she is the way she is, and who she is in the comic books. Even though in the Defenders TV series, she does at times seem to be kind of out of place. And I think the reason for her being kind of out of place is that although the character is very cool, they did a great job with the original show based around her, the Luke Cage element in the Defenders show isn't quite matching up with the Luke Cage element in the rest of the Marvel sphere. So I don't really know if they knew how to kind of interject her as well as the the dudes that fight, you know, the Iron Fist and Daredevil and Luke Cage, who's invulnerable. So I do like her character. I think she's very, very cool, and I like that she's been involved in this Defenders series, which is very, very cool. If you haven't watched it yet, make sure you do so. It's not super long. Matter of fact, I think Daredevil 1 and 2 were both longer series, so you can get through it over the course of a weekend. And why not make this the weekend you do it? If you want to learn more about Jessica Jones, we can check out some of the old books, Alias and Pulse series. You can find those old ones, I'm sure, in the archives at Heroes Comics. And of course, there are new Defenders books that are based on the show, or I shouldn't say based, but they take ideas from the show to kind of to mold it, that she's involved in there too. You can find all that stuff at Heroes Comics, Shaw and Highway 41 if you got any questions, or if you want to know more about a movie or hero that you've been seeing pop up and you want me to do an Under the Tights on them, make sure you leave that in the comments down below. If you have questions or concerns, or if I said anything that was way wrong and you want to fight with me about it, let's go. Comments down there. We'll do that. Next week, we'll have another new Under the Tights. We're getting closer to Justice League. I think we might do an Aquaman. No one ever talks about Aquaman. I think we're going to do Aquaman next week. Thanks for listening to Under the Tights. Like I said, subscribe, comments, let's argue on the internet. It's fun.